She announced, "I make more money than you. Maybe I should date someone on my level." I smiled. "Maybe you should." Then I stopped paying for the lease on her level, the luxury apartment she bragged about but couldn't actually afford. Her LinkedIn post about downsizing by choice fooled nobody. I, 34M, dated Sophie, 32F, for just over 3 years. We met the old-fashioned way, not online, not through mutual friends, but at a client networking event back in 2020. I work in IT infrastructure consulting. She was in marketing for a boutique luxury real estate firm. At the time, she was magnetic, confident, social, well-dressed, with that kind of surface-level charm that immediately grabs a room's attention. The kind of person who always had an anecdote, always knew someone who could help, always smiled just enough to make you feel flattered to be part of her orbit. I wasn't used to that kind of energy. I'm quiet, methodical, and, admittedly, more practical than romantic. But she liked that. Said I was calm, stable, mature. I thought we balanced each other out. For a while, we did. We moved in together after a year. Her lease had ended, and it made sense financially, or at least, that's how we justified it. My apartment was bigger, cheaper, in a better area. She offered to cover utilities and groceries. I handled rent. It worked, or so I thought. As her career took off, her tone started to shift. Subtly at first, jokes about how she was finally the breadwinner, little digs about how her job was more creative than mine, how consultants just get paid to talk about problems instead of solving them. It wasn't cruel, just condescending. The kind of remarks you laugh off once or twice, until you realize they're not jokes anymore. I made good money. Not flashy money, but stable, 6 figures, responsible investments, a clear plan for the next 10 years. Sophie, on the other hand, was making commission-based income, great months followed by dry ones. But she measured her success in optics, not consistency. Designer handbags, dinners at new places for networking, Instagram stories captioned, "Work hard, reward harder." I started noticing that the person she presented online wasn't the person living beside me anymore. One night, almost exactly 2 years in, we had dinner with her coworkers. I'll never forget that moment. Someone joked about power couples, and Sophie smirked, glass of wine in hand, and said, "I make more money than him. Maybe I should date someone on my level." The table laughed, everyone except me. I just smiled politely, because I knew she expected me to. Later that night, I asked her about it. Not angrily, just directly. "Did you really mean that?" She rolled her eyes. "It was a joke. You're too sensitive." I told her, "If that's your idea of humor, it's not very funny." She shrugged, turned away, and muttered, "Well, maybe it hit close to home." That was the moment something in me quietly broke. Not dramatically, just a click inside my head. She didn't know that I'd been paying her half of the lease for months. The apartment we were living in, the one she called our place, was under my name. When she'd moved in, her credit wasn't great. Too many late payments, a car loan, a few maxed out cards. So I signed for it. I handled rent, deposits, maintenance. She sent me her half, via bank transfer each month, except for the months when she had to cover work expenses or a client payment was delayed. I didn't mind at first. Relationships aren't supposed to be transactions. You help the person you love. But when she threw that line in front of people, maybe I should date someone on my level, it crystallized what I'd been avoiding. She didn't respect me. She just liked the stability I provided while she played successful. A few weeks later, she decided she wanted to upgrade. She found a luxury high-rise downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, rooftop pool, concierge, the works. Rent was more than double what we were paying. She told me she'd been approved and wanted me to move with her. I asked how she managed to qualify. Her credit still wasn't great. She smiled and said, "They let me list your income as a guarantor. I used your info from our last lease application. I hope that's fine." It wasn't fine, but I didn't argue. I just nodded and said, "Sure." A week later, she posted photos of the apartment on Instagram. Caption, "Manifesting the lifestyle you deserve sparkles #new chapter #grind culture." Her followers congratulated her. Some commented, "Your goals." I didn't say anything, but I made a quiet decision. I was done financing her manifestations. When the first month's rent came due, I didn't pay. I didn't co-sign. I didn't call the leasing office to confirm anything. Because I checked, legally, I wasn't on that lease. She'd forged the guarantor field using an old PDF from our previous apartment paperwork. And the approval she bragged about? It was conditional, pending proof of income and guarantor verification, which meant she'd never actually been approved. When the system bounced her application for incomplete documents, she panicked. 3 days later, she called me, crying, furious, switching between, "You ruined my life," and "I thought you'd have my back." I told her, calmly, "You said you wanted someone on your level. I just stepped aside so you could find them." Then I hung up. 2 weeks later, she moved out of the high-rise she'd been flaunting online and into a small studio closer to her office. Her Instagram stayed quiet for a while. Then she posted a career resilience LinkedIn essay about embracing minimalism and downsizing by choice. The people who knew the truth didn't comment. The day Sophie moved out was quieter than I expected. No yelling, no tears, no closure. Just the rhythmic sound of packing tape and her perfume lingering in the hallway after she left. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't have to. The silence said everything. I spent the next few days cleaning, sorting, and checking my accounts. She'd been on my Netflix, my Spotify, even my Amazon Prime. All little things, but symbolic of how our lives had blurred in a way that was never mutual. I changed passwords, canceled shared subscriptions, and finally, slept through the night without that knot in my chest. 2 weeks later, a friend sent me a link. It was Sophie's LinkedIn post. There she was, smiling in front of a white wall, holding a coffee cup, wearing that practiced, effortless hustle grin. The caption read, "Sometimes life pushes you to pivot. I recently decided to downsize to refocus on my goals, save smarter, and invest in what truly matters: growth, gratitude, and my career." Sparkles. Hashtag resilience, hashtag minimalism, hashtag women in business. I actually laughed. It wasn't even anger, just that dry, hollow amusement you feel when someone is still performing for an audience that no longer exists. Because I knew the truth, she hadn't decided anything. Her luxury apartment lease had been terminated for incomplete verification and unpaid fees. The leasing manager, who remembered me from before, had even called to ask if I was aware someone tried to use my financial documents. I was aware, and I'd already sent them proof that I had not authorized it. For a few months, she kept up the illusion online. Selfies in coffee shops, motivational posts, humble bragging about freelancing freedom. Meanwhile, mutual friends started drifting, not because of me, but because she couldn't keep the story straight. One friend told me Sophie had claimed I bailed on a shared lease and left her stranded. Another said she'd admitted she messed up and that I overreacted. Both versions couldn't be true, so people stopped believing either. Professionally, I focused on myself. I took a promotion at work, started mentoring junior consultants, even helped the leasing company streamline their data verification system. Ironic, considering the situation that led me there. Therapy helped me unpack the subtler part of all this. Not the fraud, not the money, but the erosion. The slow way someone's words can shrink you if you let them. How manipulation doesn't always look like control. Sometimes it just looks like mocking what you provide while secretly relying on it. Then came the twist I didn't expect. About 9 months later, I got an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "Apology, sort of." It was Sophie. The email was long, almost rambling, but the tone was clear. She'd lost her job at the real estate firm. Someone from HR had found inconsistencies in her expense reports, and though she didn't say it directly, I could tell it was serious. She wrote about being embarrassed, about realizing she'd taken people for granted, and about how success means nothing if no one's there to see it. She ended with, "I know I was cruel sometimes. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know you didn't deserve that. I thought power was about being above people, not beside them. I was wrong." I didn't reply, not out of spite, just because there was nothing left to say. A year later, I heard she'd moved to a smaller city, working remotely. Occasionally, her name still pops up on social media, motivational posts, new beginnings, the usual. But I don't check them anymore. What's strange is, I don't hate her. I don't even wish her ill. If anything, I hope she learned what she said she was learning. Because I did too, just in a different way. The truth is, the best revenge wasn't watching her fall. It was watching myself rise without needing her to notice. I bought my own place last spring. Small but bright, with space that's mine. No illusions, no shared leases, no unpaid half. When I signed the papers, the leasing agent asked if I was moving in alone. I said yes, by choice, and it felt powerful in the quietest way possible. Sometimes I think back to that dinner, the smirk, the line, the laughter. I make more money than you. Maybe I should date someone on my level. And my response, maybe you should. It used to sound bitter in my head. Now it sounds like peace. Because maybe that's what being on your level really means. Not about money or status or who's in the better apartment, but finally reaching a place where you don't need to perform for anyone. Update 1, 6 months later. That I didn't plan to update this, but enough people reached out after my original post that it feels worth closing a few open threads. And honestly, because it's strange how quickly you can rebuild a life once you stop trying to fix someone else's. After Sophie's downsizing by choice post went mildly viral in her little marketing bubble, things got weirdly quiet. No direct confrontation, no texts, no "you ruined my life" messages, just digital silence. Then mutual acquaintances started mentioning how she'd been pivoting her brand. She launched a short-lived consulting page about authentic living and personal rebranding. I know, the irony writes itself. Apparently, it didn't last. The company she worked for cut her loose after a compliance review. She'd used her corporate card for what she labeled client engagement dinners, which turned out to be brunches and spa visits with friends. I didn't celebrate when I heard that. It just made sense. The pattern had always been there. The only difference was now she couldn't charm her way out of it. Meanwhile, my own life got very quiet in a good way. For months, I stayed single. Went to work, worked out, cooked my own meals, read before bed. No drama, no performance. Therapy helped more than I expected, especially when my therapist pointed out that Sophie's power came from needing validation, while mine came from avoiding it. That imbalance had kept me in her orbit. It hit me how often I'd confused keeping peace with avoiding truth. I'd rather endure discomfort than confrontation, and that's exactly the kind of silence that people like her thrive in. In early spring, I started dating again. Nothing serious, just human connection. One woman I met, Julia, was calm, practical, emotionally straightforward. We've been seeing each other for a few months now. She doesn't play games, doesn't care about optics, doesn't post every life update online. The first time she saw my apartment, she said, "It's nice that everything here feels lived in, not staged." That line stuck with me. It was exactly the opposite of Sophie's world. Hers was always staged, always curated. About a month ago, I ran into Sophie by accident. A random Thursday afternoon at a co-working cafe. She looked fine, normal, maybe a little thinner, maybe a little tired. She smiled that old PR smile, the one that never reached her eyes. We chatted briefly, polite, neutral. She mentioned she was consulting remotely and taking a break from the city. I nodded, wished her well, and left it at that. 10 minutes later, I got a message on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. It was Sophie's private one, the one she used for close friends. She'd sent, "I'm glad you're doing well. You always deserved better energy around you." I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because she was right. That night, I deleted our old photos from my cloud drive. Not out of spite, more like clearing dust off a shelf. When I closed my laptop, I realized that for the first time in years, there wasn't anything left of her in my life that needed maintenance. No shared accounts, no unpaid balances, no quiet resentment. Just peace, the kind that doesn't post about itself. Final update, 2 years later. It's been a little over 2 years since I first wrote about Sophie, the "I make more money than you" line, and everything that unraveled afterward. If you told me back then that I'd be sitting in my own house, calm, financially comfortable, and genuinely indifferent to all of it, I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are, where I am now. I bought a small house last summer. Not huge, not flashy, just a clean, bright space that feels like mine. It's in a quiet neighborhood outside the city, with a small yard I actually take care of. I built a workspace in the spare room for my consulting projects. I'm still in IT, but now I run a small team for a cybersecurity firm. The irony isn't lost on me. Protecting companies from internal misuse of data when my own personal breach was someone I trusted. That experience taught me more about due diligence than any corporate seminar could. Julia and I are still together. We moved in last year. She's steady, kind, the kind of person who listens before she speaks. We don't do grand gestures or performative affection. It's quiet, reciprocal, and real. Sometimes she'll ask about that story. She knows the basics. But I don't talk about Sophie much anymore. Not because it hurts, but because it's like recalling a version of myself I've long outgrown. Where she ended up. I haven't spoken to Sophie since that cafe encounter, but the internet tells its own stories. Her old social media accounts are mostly dormant now. The rebranding coach phase fizzled out. Last I heard through mutuals, she moved back to her hometown to live closer to family. Apparently, she freelances part-time and runs a lifestyle newsletter that gets modest engagement, mostly about slowing down and living authentically. I don't say that mockingly. If she's finally living a simpler life, genuinely, not for optics, then good. She always had potential. It just got buried under performance. Maybe losing everything forced her to find something real. We're both different people now, just in opposite directions. What I learned: there's this quiet kind of grief that comes after being used, not just for money or stability, but for identity. It's the grief of realizing you were someone's safety net while they rehearsed a better version of themselves. The thing no one tells you is that when you stop being their anchor, they don't sink, they drift. And you stop floating for them. You just stand. That's what healing ended up being for me, learning to stand. No hero arc, no revenge, just stillness. When you strip away all the noise, the posts, the arguments, the social comparisons, you're left with something almost anticlimactic: peace. It's not cinematic. It doesn't make for a viral headline, but it's the one thing people who thrive on image can never fake. The irony: a few months ago, Sophie viewed my LinkedIn profile. I only noticed because she'd forgotten to use private mode. Her headline read, "Freelance consultant helping people realign their lives with purpose." For a brief second, I felt that old mixture of irritation and pity. Then I realized it doesn't matter. She's still chasing validation. I stopped needing it. That's the quiet power she'll never understand. Walking away and not needing to be right. Closing thoughts. People love the idea of winning a breakup, but that's not how it works. Winning implies you're still playing the same game. The real freedom is leaving the arena entirely. I don't care if Sophie ever apologizes again, or if people think she changed. All I know is that I learned what I needed to. Don't confuse composure with silence. Don't let someone treat your stability like a given. And never, ever apologize for walking away from someone who confuses love with leverage.